Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and it's 5 o'clock Thursday. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast. And tonight we're talking about, and hopefully you'll be talking with me tonight, about recovery, recovering yourself in a way that brings resolution to spiritual dilemmas and problems, but more importantly, brings you to yourself, brings you to who you are as opposed to who you want to be or who you think you might be or who you should be. Recovery is about recovering yourself, and uncovering yourself from all the ways that you may have been um, not yourself. So, a lot of people um, think that when we're talking about recovery, we're talking about substance abuse like alcohol, drugs, food. But recovery is really about so much more. So, here's a little bit of background on me. I have been working in the field of recovery for about 40 years. Now, initially, I worked in Nova Scotia for the Commission on Drug Dependency. It's a different name now, but I was working in a small town called Liverpool in Nova Scotia in the 80s, working specifically with people who were recovering from substance abuse. And I was working with their families and working with codependency, working with people who had not only were using alcohol and drugs, but also food. So that was pretty small group. What I learned was that all of these people, especially if they were involved in a 12-step program, were developing and cultivating a spiritual relationship with themselves. They were seeing that there was more to life than just, here, I'm addicted to this substance, I got to stop using. The stopping using, the abstaining was one piece, but there was so much more. And the use of the drug or the alcohol or the substance or behaviors like gambling, prostitution, sex, relationship addicts, codependency even, all of those things are just the icing on the cake, the tip of the iceberg of what's underlying all of this usage. And that's what I really want to talk about with you today, is that there's so much to us, and that the patternings of what we go to, our go-to drugs, if you will, our go-to patterns, our go-to habits, our go-to thoughts or feelings, emotions, are sometimes helping us cover up or protect us from pain, protect us from hurt, protect us from old wounds that we don't want to have come up again. So when I talk about recovery, I'm talking about how do we recover ourselves from ways of being and things that we do, that how could we recover ourselves so that we're most authentic self, that we're most in alignment with our highest truth, our highest knowing, our highest good. So again, when I was in our 40s, hi Alicia, welcome. When I was in my 40s, 30s, and 40s, and I was working specifically in the field of addictions, I thought only in terms of this iceberg. I didn't think in terms of so much more of what's going on with each individual that has them use substances, use behaviors, use activities. And then a long time ago, in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it says all addictions are caused by, I'm not quoting here, are caused by restless, irritable discontent. So what was being said to me here was, when we feel restless, irritable, discontent, when we feel anxious, we feel just uncomfortable, we don't like feeling that. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. We don't like being out of sorts. We don't like being feeling unsure of ourselves, insecure. And so we reach for things that are going to make us feel something better. When we're in restless, irritable discontent, we might feel the stress hormones of cortisol, of adrenaline, and I think it's dopamine. Let me look really quick. norepinephrine, so the cortisols, adrenals. We might be feeling the anxiety or anxiousness or stress hormones. And what we want to do is try to get them to feel, we want to feel better. So we take other substances that calm us down, that make us feel better, serotonin development, dopamine development, oxytocin development, that we calms us down. So we're not feeling the restlessness, irritable discontent. So we're in this constant up and down, in and out of the 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 up and down, in and out of us being human. We're human beings having human experiences, and we do not like being human. Actually, if you think about it, we do all those things, do as much as we can to avoid and ignore experiencing our humanness, unless it's those experiences that we deem as awesome and blissful, and being in love and romantic and all of those happy emotions. That's what we want in terms of humanness. But our humanness is also the other stuff, the anxiety, the frustration, the discomfort, the despair, the depression, the grief, the sorrow. My hands are going down and down and down. There's so much to this humanness, but we've compartmentalized it to say, no, 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 I don't want any of that. I just want this. So most of us have found all kinds of ways to get to provide this and avoid this. So when we're feeling restless, irritable, discontent, or those are just the short words for anxiety, stress, just uncomfortable with ourselves, we tend to reach for something. Now, it can be a substance, it can be alcohol or drugs or coffee or tobacco or marijuana, anything and everything we reach for. It can be external. But part of this conversation is about the part that reaches for a thought pattern or a feeling pattern that goes on and on and on. Hi, Margaret. Nice to see you. And if you can stay on, great. If you can't, that's okay. So not only are we reaching for or using substances to help us avoid, ignore, and distract, and perhaps even deny what we're experiencing, whatever it is, this discomfort. We also use emotions, and we use thoughts, and we use somatic feelings. So, for instance, it's not uncommon. So for me, I was a worrier. I'm not so much of a worrier anymore, but worrying was a focus. It was the way that I had kept my mind attending to something, and that helped me, for some reason, calm everything else. I've also have a lot of guilt, and a lot of that is unconscious, and that's a lot of what this is about today, is revealing some of those unconscious patterns. Is like, oh yeah, I've been feeling that all the time and never even knew it. So the more that we can just explore this for you and for me and for everyone, the more we can uncover and recover who we really are. It's like, oh yeah, I do that. And so when we go, oh yeah, I do that, it's like, who am I if I don't do that? Who am I if I stop doing that? And that's part of this recovery piece. So I'm kind of saying, I'm trying to get everything out at one time because there's so much that I want to share with you. So some of us have go to somatic experiences. So we think of people who are hypochondriacs, right? Is like they have stress in their life, or they have something that's going on for them, and what they do is, when it's too much, they create physical somatic experiences, aches and pains, or headaches, or something, and that's where they put their attention. That helps them not deal with whatever it is that they don't want to deal with, that restless, irritable discontent. So there's places that we do it in terms of negative patterns, and there's also the positive patterns. But wherever we find relief, that's what we're going to use. I was thinking about the movie Inside Out. That was a Pixar movie a number of years ago, and it was a great movie because they talked about all of the different emotions, or so many of the different emotions that we experience because we're human beings, and all the ways that we distract ourselves, avoid our, try to compartmentalize so that we're a happy person. We want to be a happy person, but we can't because we've got all of these dynamics happening inside of us. And quite often we attach a label. So, in a sense, in talking about recovery today, I don't want to attach labels to that you're an addict or that you're in recovery, because when we do that, then now you're caught in a thing, that you're a thing, as opposed to, oh, this is a process. This is something that I did because I didn't want to feel how horrible my life was or how uncomfortable it can get. And I wanted to distract myself from it. So these were patterns that I learned to distract myself. Now, one of the things I learned that I thought was really interesting, there's a lot of things I'm going to share with you, and I think they're all really interesting, um, uh, is that when I was a little kid, I'll just put it this way in terms of a story. As a little kid, I lived with large family, 8 brothers and sisters, mom, dad, sometimes grandma was there, sometimes aunties were there, huge family. There was a lot of anxiety because there was so much going on and there was no sense of calmness about it. There was this anxiety. And so all the trauma drama, all of the stuff that was happening, that was my normal. So my level of cortisol, level of adrenaline, my level of stress, this was my baseline. So when I went out into the world, that was my baseline. So I began to create reality to maintain that baseline. So even though this was crazy, un, un, it was so much that was not what I wanted, and I wanted to go out into the world and create a better life for myself. This was my baseline of normal. So when I went out, I created real relationships and situations that allowed me to maintain that baseline, which meant that I wasn't in peace and serenity and playfulness and happiness and joy and connection and loving, engaged relationships. I was in a lot of conflict because that was normal. So we create what's normal in terms of our hormonal balance. Hello from Australia. Nice to see you. Um, so this hormonal balance is what I carried with me. And it wasn't until someone said, Rosie, that was your normal, and you don't have to do that anymore. You can actually stop doing that. And so I had to create a new baseline of normal. And that was really challenging. And it's not like I learned that in my 20s and in 30, the point I learned it is like, okay, we'll just turn that around and we're done and good to go. It's like, no, it's like, how do I create that complexity? How do I do that? Because so much of it is unconscious for us. And the more unconscious it is, we can't work with what's unconscious. So we have to create awareness. We have to cultivate this awareness of what are those patterns that keep me stuck in this stress level, as opposed to leveling up into something that's more peaceful. So this process is very well, I want to say it's slow, but it's not necessary. It's necessarily slow. It's only slow. It only takes the time it takes. And we never know. I don't know how long it's going to take for any of us. But the more we are conscious of the patterning and what we want to create, the more that we can become conscious of those patterns. So even now, being almost 69 years old, I'm still uncovering these patterns of being. And these patterns, in a sense, are what one would consider addictive connections. And those addictive in a sense that the pattern is hooked into a sense of, again, the stress, the hormonal balance between the adrenaline cortisol levels and the oxytocins and the ones that are higher levels. And because I didn't know so much of this, the higher levels of being and joy, I didn't even know how to get there. They were happenstance. It just happened I would be there. But how do we create that intentionally? And that's what these videos are about. All my videos are about empowering and supporting every single one of us to up level ourselves to the next level and the next level of joy and peace and fun and creativity. So you guys who are here, I would love it if you haven't already liked this, if you're finding value here, and please subscribe and please share it too if you know people who have issues with, as we all do. This is part of the element of this is we are all involved in this recovering of ourselves in this human experience. One of the interesting things that so please and thank you for liking the video, and thank you for sharing it with people who are perhaps struggling with and challenged by their life. Hi, Marge, nice to see you. Who are struggling and challenged by, hey, I want this life of light. I know, a lot of people that I talk to have had some phenomenal experience of joy or of light or of beauty or of creation, and they go, I want that. That's how I want to be every single day. And they go, oh, I want that every day, but people don't live that way, right? That's part of a rationalization. People don't live that way. Why would I be able to do that when nobody else is able to do that? That's another rationalization. So we have a desire to hi, Alyssa, glad you're here. We have this desire to up level our life into a joyful, abundant, fulfilling experience. And we go, no, I can't do that. Who am I to do it? And I've experienced that numerous times for myself. Who am I to have a great life? And what about, and then the guilt shows up. That's another strategy, right? What about all those people that don't have the privileges I have, or don't have the wherewithal or whatever? And I go into guilt as opposed to going, no, this is what I want. This is a hell yes. I want this level of joy and beauty in my life. David Hawkins talks about us being 100% potentiality because we're universal beings. We are beings of the universe, and the universe is potentiality, 100% potentiality. That means I have 100% potentiality to create a great life, an extraordinary life. And that's what I want for everybody, is to grow and have an extraordinary life. And so if I'm willing and dedicated and committed to say, okay, I want to know the full potentiality of this being, then my explorations and my openness to listening for where I'm limiting myself is the practice. And then I come to recover myself from the limiting beliefs, the limiting thoughts, the limiting patterns of being. So the element of recovering is I'm recovering myself from patterns of being. I'm recovering myself from things that I learned that I thought was true. I'm recovering myself from the way that our world sees itself in terms of fear and lack. And you got to work hard. You can't. It just isn't going to come to you, right? How many times have you heard that? It's not just going to come to you. You got to work for it. Those kinds of patternings rob us of exploring the full potentiality of who I am. It's like, that's what somebody else says, but what's true for me? So even though this conversation is, in a sense, related to what we do when we feel restless, irritable, discontent, we also want to see what we do that goes in the other direction. So that's kind of not very clear right now, but let me because I had another thought, just dive in. When we're restless, irritable, discontent, we have a choice. We can say, okay, I am uncomfortable right now. I'm uncomfortable with my experience that I'm having in this moment. I'm feeling an emotion that I am not comfortable with right now. One of my clients is in the process of breaking up with her partner. And so she's like, I don't like how it feels right now. She goes, I get it. I know I did the right thing, but why am I feeling so uncomfortable? Why do I feel this stuff? I shouldn't feel this stuff. Again, the rationalization. I shouldn't feel this stuff. I'm the one that broke up with them. It's like, but what she is experiencing is this discomfort of her experience. And so often we're not having the experience of being human. We have the intellectualizing, the emotionalizing, the spiritualizing, the somaticizing, as in the body experience, uh, and we objectify or we do all this stuff, but it's rare that we allow ourselves to have the true experience that we're having. And for me, again, this is part of the potentiality, is like if I came here, I believe I came here, and I believe everyone comes here to have this human experience. If I came here to have this human experience, how do I do that? And part of doing that is seeing all the ways that I keep myself from doing that. And that's for me, a very joyful experience to go, oh man, look at that. Look at how I'm not letting myself have this true human experience. And so every time that I don't let myself have a true human experience, I pretty well put a layer of something over that, justification or guilt. I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't think this way. I shouldn't be this way. And then kind of dissolves it, and then another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. And finally, I've got all these layers, but I still haven't had the true human experience. So as we go, okay, I'm having this restless, irritable moment. I'm really uncomfortable. I want to reach for a cookie. I want to reach for a cigarette. I want to reach for a glass of wine. I want to reach for something. I go, okay, no, I'm feeling this restless, irritable discontent. What's the source of that restless, irritable discontent? What's the source? What's causing, in a sense, the cause of the restless, irritable discontent? And to me, as I've been working in recovery all these years, that question came not too long ago. And it was so helpful to me to go, okay, here's this restless, irritable discontent. I'm using something to keep myself from having that feeling of restless, irritable, but what's the source of that? And what kept getting revealed was all this, not all this as a big, but there were layers and layers of woundedness and hurtedness and human experiencingness that I hadn't tapped into because I had covered it all up with these layers of avoiding all the good ways that I avoid and ignore and distract myself from my real authentic human experience. And so every time that I was able to have a restless, irritable moment, every time it came, like, which is like every day, and then go, okay, stop. What's the experience you're having here? What's the real experience you're having here? Not without intellectualizing it, but just having the experience. It's become much more less. Most of us are really scared to have this human experience. We're really afraid to to appreciate and value this extraordinariness of this being. Yeah, we're so afraid of it, and that we again find all of these different ways of minimizing or distracting ourselves from this. But when we get to, okay, there's a part of me that I have yet to recognize or acknowledge or appreciate or honor. There's a part of me that had an experience a long time ago, maybe in a past life. Maybe it was some trauma that my parents or ancestors brought in. I don't know, but I'm got this experience in me, and in relation to being human, this is what I'm into. This is what I've got going on. So how do I be with this? How do I explore this without covering it up, without justifying? Justifying is another pattern of being that can be very habitual, and it robs us of our true birthright to experience this, our shoulds and our shouldn'ts. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't feel that way. I'm not supposed to feel that way. I'm supposed to have a knowing. I'm supposed to know it all. It's like all that stuff robs me of the experience of being human. It robs me of the fullest expression that's possible in this human being. And that's again what I want for every one of us is the more that we can experience ourselves in our fullest humanness, the more that we are able to express not only perhaps the despair and dread, but also the joy and the bliss and the delight and the innocence and the playfulness and the laughter that's possible. I don't know if you've ever been around people who are very constrained, and they're constrained, and so they don't have much room for playfulness. They don't have much room for laughter because it's all constrained. They have to hold it. That's part of the patterning, both physically perhaps, but also in terms of a mentalization and a construct position that that keeps them from relaxed and fun and playful and joyful and authentic. Let the dog out. Just 1 second. So I will have to let Gracie in a few minutes, and I realized that I had turned my microphone on, but I hadn't actually pulled my microphone up. So I'm going to do that right now. And I suspect that you might be able to hear me better. Is that correct? Can you hear me better? I hope. If not, that's okay. Um, so so when we're using a pattern of feelings, patterns of thinking, justifying, patterns of somatics. If I get a little closer here, that's maybe a little bit better. It should be going. I hope that works. Is that better? It's not doing anything. Sorry. Let's see what this is. Sorry. All right. See, testing a little bit better. I don't know why. Hang on 1 second, please. Testing. Okay. All right. It should be better. If it's not, I apologize. So, any thoughts from you guys? Any questions about what you're hearing? I'm saying an awful lot, and there's no specific structure. I tend to not psychologicalize everything because what I like to do, what's important to me, is in a sense, humanize our reality, humanize our experience, as opposed to psychologicalize it or even spiritualize it, because we're having a human experience. And for me, as a person of of almost 70 years, a lot of experience, a lot of education, a lot of personal growth, as well as working with other people, I I've come to see people and experience in them as who they are in their humanness. And so often we don't see people and experience people in their humanness. We experience them in the identity of what we give them. That's my husband, that's my child. But we lose the sense of humanness with them. And when we lose a sense of humanness with them, we lose the connection. And when we can identify and acknowledge their humanness, now we start to engage with them and relate with them as our humanness. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to talk deep stuff. It just means that we see them. And that's what we all want, is we want to be seen. But we have to see ourselves first. And we can sometimes see ourselves through other people. That's a really, really important practice, is like, oh, look at that person. Look at what they're doing. I don't like that. Huh. I don't like that. I wonder if I'm doing that. I wonder if I'm like that. And we begin to explore based on what we're experiencing with other people. So we have to do that both and. It's like, and a lot of times we emphasize, our societies emphasize seeing other people. Uh, um, I just lost my thought because I saw what Marge just wrote. Marge just wrote, I lose the sense of humanness when I'm in competition. That's beautiful. Yeah. It's like they're the other now, and they're the other, and I'm the this. And we lose that sense of connection and engagement. And that competition can be fun, but but we have to see it differently, as opposed to the I'm going to win and you're going to lose, as opposed to the playfulness of it. So thanks for bringing that up, Marge. So again, the point. Yeah, Marge just says Marge is a really good friend of mine, and we play Wii golf almost probably 4 times a week, if not more. And And rather than being competitive, we're really enjoying cheering the other person on and enjoying them doing well too. And so we can be competitive in a sense of enjoying that, but there's also that part like, oh boy, I'm really glad you got that hole in one or whatever that is. That's really fun. So thanks for bringing that in, Marge. I appreciate it. So the point of this conversation of recovery is as a resolve for spiritual dilemmas. It brings us to the point of what am I needing to recover myself from? What does that even mean? And where's the spiritual dilemmas in this? Um, so quite often, if you work with me or talk with me or read my work, there's quite a bit of conversations about dilemmas. And the dilemma is, I want this and I want this. Now I want this and I want this. Now I got conflicting dilemmas, conflicting commitments, conflicting. Sorry, I'm just getting a little excited here. Um, I'm in conflict. There's a dilemma. I want this and I want that, and some of that can be easy. I want chicken for dinner, and I got some fish. What am I going to do? I don't know. It's just a dilemma. Or it can be, I really want this life of potentiality. I really want to know the fullness of life. I want to know the fulfillment of my human spirit. I want to know that, but I'm afraid. And I want to hold on to life and the security and the stability as I know it. And so that creates that conflict and that dilemma. And how am I going to resolve that? How do I resolve that? And that's where most people are in that the conflicting commitments, because I don't know one person who would say, no, I came here to be stuck. I came here to be small. I came here to be on the planet to be under the radar. That's what I came here to be. I don't know one person who would say that, because we've all come here. Every person I helped with vision statements and where they want to go in their life, 99% of them want to do something good for the planet. They want to do good for people. They want to bring happiness and joy and fulfillment to their families. Yet they're not always acting that way. Like Marge just said, I want to be healthy and I don't want to diet. Beautiful. It's like, how do you do that? That's a dilemma. And there's an easy way to be healthy and not to diet, and that's to look at what is healthy, and also what is healthy that could allow you to not have to be on a diet. And what does diet mean? For most people, diet means deprivation. A lot of people are the patterning and the addiction, in a sense, is to lose weight, lose weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. And we're in a cycle and a patterning of justifications and emotional swings, all of these patternings that are not enhancing one's life. It's not actually moving one in the direction of health and well-being. And so we have to untangle that. And that's what I love about being a transformational coach and a thinking partner for so many people, is we're untangling these interpretations. What is a diet? Why do we do it? Why is it not working? This swing up and down. Why does it work? Sometimes it doesn't. All of that is this beautiful process of untethering ourselves from dynamics and thinking patterns and emotional patterns we don't even know exists, but have been with us for a very long time. I had a client this morning. We'll call him Harold, and Harold has a small business, and he has a guy who's working for him who's a sales guy, and the sales guy thinks he's great, but he's actually not doing much. And Harold, who's my client, is saying, I don't know what to do. And he said, I've been trying for years to get him to do it differently, but he's not doing it differently. And I'm just so in that conversation, I have to start to listen to what's the patterning that Harold is attached to. He doesn't even know exists, but has been with him for so long. I don't even know what it is, but we have to explore these dynamics, these thoughts these elements of life. We have to recover ourselves from these unconscious patterns, so that we are free of our spiritual dilemmas, and we can actually move forward in being healthy and blissful and joyful and fulfilled. So in this conversation with him, I said, so at one point he mentioned that the sales guy, we'll call him Tim. So, and these are all made up names, so nobody, it's confidential. So he says, he said, I just saw the arrogance in Tim, and it was just like, I got it, how I just hate that. And he reacts to that. And I said, so who else was arrogant in your life? And who else didn't get it? And who else wouldn't do the work? Who else wouldn't up level themselves for you? And he said, oh, my mom. And I said, who else? And he said, well, my brother. And then he said, I said, who else? And he said, well, my stepdad. So, and his wife, his ex-wife. Excuse me, Gracie. Okay. What? So in asking those questions, he began to look underneath the surface of the thinking patterns. And if only I would do it differently, if only he would do it, all that stuff to look different. So what is this relationship that he has with these people? What is his relationship? What's it been like for him being human with a mother who is really arrogant and didn't see him and wouldn't see him, more importantly? The same with his stepfather or his ex-wife, or what's his relationship inside that? He's having an experience, and he's having an experience that he's never explored before. But that right there is what keeps him engaged with a person that, again, is part of the pattern of he's not doing it, he's not working harder, he's not developing, he's not changing, he's not growing. And he keeps focusing on on Tim, but it's like, what's happening in you that has you keep in this cycle and doesn't allow you to move beyond this? And I just find that so fascinating as a thinking partner in helping people explore who they are inside. Not, again, in terms of psychological, I'm making that word up, that's why I can't say, creating psychological terms for it, but by going, yeah, who are you in there? What's it like? What's in the way? How are you distracting yourself from what's underlying this restless, what's making you uncomfortable? What's the experience of that? I found this true not only in terms of these restless, irritable discontent, in terms of woundings, we'll say, but also in terms of the discomfort with fulfillment, discomfort with joy, with playfulness, with having fun. I found myself as uncomfortable with the idea of having a great life in the fullest potentiality as I was with the fear of despair and horrible, terrible feelings that I wanted to ignore and avoid. I'm doing the same with ignoring my positiveness. And this is this is a great place for each one of us to continue to explore for ourselves. And I had this conversation with my daughter today, and Alicia, about, okay, what are you committed to? And it's like, well, and I kind of get fuzzy with that question. And it's like, I got to get clearer about that, because what they were asking me, I began to get uncomfortable. And I started to feel the restless, irritable discontent, the discomfort of being not being questioned, but really asking myself, what is it I am committed to enough? And each one of us has to do that, so that I know for myself that I'm committed enough to knowing my full potentiality, that I'm willing to keep exploring these parts when I get restless, irritable, or discontent. And when I feel that sadness, or sometimes I feel things I don't even know what they are. It's just uncomfortable, and I can't make it go away. I've stopped using all the substances that I used to use, pretty much, And I'm not justifying and rationalizing. I'm not yes-butting. I'm not shoulding myself. I'm just letting it be. And the discomfort can be really uncomfortable. And that's what every single one of us, I suspect, has to be with, is our own humanness. We have to have the compassion for our own self and honor this experience as opposed to dismiss it. So much of what we do in our reality personally is dismiss this being and say, oh, I'm going to do what Marge does, or I'm going to do what Alyssa does, or I'm going to do what um, Joe does. Okay, I'm just going to do what. It's a dismissing of this being, this individual. And the idea is, I want to recover myself. I want to recover myself from all of the elements of life that where I disappeared and became invisible and became thought myself to be insignificant. Those places in my life where I had trained myself to believe that and go, okay, how do I stop doing that? And that's how we do it, is we just stop seeing. We see where we can stop doing that. We can see where we are living out things and patterns that aren't relevant in the moment. So again, for instance, the client that's broke up with her boyfriend and going, yeah, I'm actually feeling a lot of relief here, but the emotions are over here, and I don't know what to do with that. And on top of that, here's all this baggage from my childhood, abandonment, betrayal, and all this stuff I don't know what to do with. And I think that was a beautiful piece of this work for tonight in this conversation, to say there's so much going on for each and every one of us. We've got the level of circumstances. Yeah, broke up with my boyfriend. Got the experience. Yeah, I'm kind of relieved about that. I feel good about that. And then there's the emotions of, I feel good about that, but at the same time, I'm feeling the withdrawals of that, because again, the patterns of relationship create a hormonal situation, and when we lose the relationship, those hormonal balances have to shift. So we've got this physical, emotional thing going on, and then we've got all that gets stirred up from our childhood or from past lives or from other places. We got all this stirred up. What do we do with that? How do we look at it? We're not given the tools. We don't have the tools, most of us, to go, oh yeah, oh, I see. That's how it is. And I can be with it if I'm more aware of it. And I consciously have to keep reminding myself of this pattern. I'd love to hear more from you if you have questions. If you like this video and it's meaningful to you, or value of it in any way, I would love you to give me likes or thumbs up. And if you think it could be helpful to other people, it would be great for you to share it. I would really love that. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear what you're hearing, and what's important to you. That would be great. What have I said that's been of value to you in this process so far? So Alyssa says one question she has is, I'm not addicted to anything, so what am I recovering myself from? That's a great question, and it depends on how deep you want to go with this, or how expansive you want to go with it. Lately, I've been a long time ago. David Hawkins, in one of his books, says it's kind of a prayer. It's like in the AA or the 12-step program. It's I turn my will over to God, or I will my will. I will your will. So but in this case, David Hawkins says, he says, I surrender my existence and all its expressions to God. And I went, oh my God, that is just impossible. I mean, it's enough to say, hey, I will my will, or turn my will over to a higher power. But it's another thing to go, I don't know, my existence, turn my will over, my whole existence over. That's a big deal. But I loved, again, the potentiality of that in terms of totally surrendering to a higher power, and the power that I believe and trust and know to be loving and kind and all giving. And so in that, it's like am now able to go, okay, so today I am surrendering the existence of my past and all the expressions of that. So for me, that allows me to say, I learned things. I collected data. I collected apps. I collected software for decades. And in that collection is a bunch of stuff that I don't need anymore. It's not relevant to who I am now. And so I'm able to say, I surrender all of that so that I can be me right now in this moment. It's been really helpful then to be able to then in that moment watch what shows up, the yes buts. What about this? Or, oh, don't you feel guilty about letting go of this? All of those things that start to show up gives me some perspective on what's still there. All the patternings that are so habitual, I don't even know they're there until I become more aware of them. So if I'm not in this state of peace and serenity and tranquility and joy and expansion and fullest expression of myself, whatever that is, then I'm doing something else. And I want to recover myself. So I recover myself from my past. I recover myself from data that I collected through, just programming of television and news, the programming of collective unconscious, all that programming. It's like we're recovering ourselves from all of that. The last year with the pandemic, we're recovering ourselves from the sense of doom, the sense of despair, the sense of uncertainty. We're recovering ourselves from the isolation of being away from so much of our family. We're recovering ourselves and saying, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm good. Gracie's good too. Um, so I hope that answers your question a little bit, Alyssa. Margaret says, addictive thought patterns, ways of thinking, maybe even patterns of ignoring your emotional materials. Yeah, we're recovering when we think about addictions, we're recovering ourselves from alcohol. Um, we're bringing ourselves out of this relationship of something that has control over us. When we're recovering ourselves, reclaiming ourselves, we're taking ourselves out of the grasp of those things that we have given our power over to. Give our power over to, how many of us have given our power over to guilt? I know so many people that it's like, I don't, you're supposed to feel guilty about that, aren't you? You're supposed to feel guilty about that. And the same with shame is, yeah, I'm supposed to feel shame about that because I'm this. I'm gay, or I'm not working, or I'm love my life. Aren't I supposed to feel bad about that? To enjoy it, aren't I supposed to feel bad? These patternings are so ingrained, and so we're recovering when we can go, that thought doesn't make sense anymore in terms of where I'm going on my trajectory of joy. I woke up the other day, I may have mentioned this last time, but it was like I was having this moment of joyousness all day. It's like, shouldn't I feel guilty about that? That guilt is so ingrained. It's what I'm supposed to feel because I grew up that way and took it on. I took it on. So those things that we took on, we can now go, I'm recovering. I'm going to take myself back. I'm going to take myself and come over into the joy, playful innocence. Because the truth is we are this childlike innocence. We are this joyful, playful, exuberant, expansive, unlimited abilities to be, and that's what we are. And so the more that we go, yeah, that's what I am, and I'm living as if I'm constrained and limited and held back, and I'm under the control of, then we go, no, I don't want to do that anymore. One of the books that I recommend is Oneness, and I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to forget why I said it. But this is one of the books that I highly recommend. I'll remember what I was going to say about that in a second, maybe. So now I'm pausing. So I just have a few minutes left, actually. I'll just shift abruptly um, to the idea that because I only have about 8 minutes left, I think, on this call before YouTube says adios for us. If you have any other questions that you have or feedback or your takeaways, like what are you taking away from this? I really appreciate the amount of time you've spent here with me. Makes me really happy to see you there and that you're here with me in this conversation. But I'd love to hear what's your takeaway? What is it that's been most valuable for you in that if you haven't responded already? Marge says, I'm recovering from my mom's beliefs about the depression. That's a really good one, is those of us who have parents from the generation that lived through the depression, we just, it's just like a magnet. And we just have this input of data. That's what I was going to say in terms of we're just these innocent beings and we're imprinted by all of this information. And so what we want to do is it's like a computer, we want to defrag and get all that stuff that's not us out so that we are free to just have a joyful life. Alicia says it's really interesting to reflect on how we might feel guilty when things are going well in our life. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's very for some of us, and like I said, for myself, it's very challenging to really just enjoy myself without making something of it, you know? Uh, I don't know about you, but those times where people might say, wow, you got a great life. And you go, yeah, but you don't know about, and then you fill in the blanks as opposed to going, yeah, I got a great life and I'm having such a good time. It's really fun. So it's that kind of thing. So here's a few things that I wrote down that I wanted to make sure that we covered, and some of this will be just a replay, a recap. When you're restless, emotional, or uncomfortable, what is your go-to pattern of thinking and feeling? Do you worry? So here's another thing people do: they futurize. They think about the future, or they go into the past. So those both are patterns of distracting from what's occurring right here, right now, and experiencing here. And that's what we're wanting to do, is we're wanting to have more of this joyful experience, even if it's difficult, this experience of humanness. Patterns of being, imprints we've developed that made sense by those we've created these imprints of patterns from when we were little kids and earlier. And now we're able to consciously, we can look at that. And a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work is also about this, is we can look at that and go, that doesn't make sense to hold on to that anymore. It doesn't make sense because I don't want to think that way. In Oneness, it says, we're here to completely reject consensus reality. Now, that's another huge statement. We're here to completely reject consensus view of reality. What's left? Joy, love, not fear-based, but essence-based, expansion, exploration, creativity, one's own sense of truth. Here's what's true for me. And that's all I'm doing is sharing with you tonight is here's what's true for me. Here's what I've learned. Here's what made sense to me. Here's what I've seen with my clients. Here's what I've practiced. Here's what's here. And I want you to be able to do the same thing. This is my truth for you. You saying, this is my truth. I don't have to feel guilty about that. I don't have to apologize for my truth. I don't have to apologize for who I am or what I am. No more apologizing. Apologizing is another pattern of of being. That's also was a big one of mine. I'd always apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So that's another one of those. Another big takeaway I want for you guys is that watch what we're calling them hormones, but we know cortisol, adrenaline, we know those stress hormones, but we also know the other ones. We know the difference. And we want to cultivate more time, like all the time, in the oxytocin, serotonin. We want dopamines. We want to be more in that joyful place, not by eating chocolate. That's a great source. That can be part of it too. You can eat chocolate as much as you want, but to have that come from an internal source And that's the other clue here is that our joy, as well as our anger, our frustrations come from within. And you've heard this many times, I suspect, in terms of spiritual conversations, is your joy and it all comes from within. And the more that you practice that and experiment with it, the more that you'll find that to be true, I think. The big piece for me is that I see all of this as experiments. If I took this on and go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to live knowing this is true, I don't even know where to start. But if I take one moment at a time and really be present to it and go, what is the experience I'm having here? And watch myself distract and go, oh, there you go, there it is. And watch myself and go, wow, that's really interesting. It's all interesting. It's all fascinating, I think. And I think every one of us loves it because we love ourselves and we have so much to offer ourselves in these very entertaining ways of growing and developing ourselves and recovering ourselves from the suffering and the demise and the limited perspectives that we've grown up into and grown through. And so I so appreciate each and every one of you guys. I'm looking over into the chat line because that's where I can see who's here. I appreciate you staying because you know about what I'm talking about. You know it enough to stay here and listen and maybe reflect and resonate with what I'm saying. That's the most important thing is you might resonate with what I'm saying, which is great. That gives you some clarity about that. And if you don't resonate with me, that's real cool too, because you can go, no, that's not a truth for me. This is a truth for me. And you get to clarify for yourself. And that's again the place where we sometimes go to I'm wrong or she's wrong. That's another pattern where we make other people wrong to make ourselves right, or make other people right to make ourselves wrong. But we go, no, Rosie's saying what she's saying, and that helps me clarify what's important to me so that I don't have to think about, I should think differently. You just do think differently. And I appreciate them. That's part of me engaging and connecting and celebrating your humanness because you are going to have different ways of seeing or believing or acting or being, right? And you're going to have different ways of resolving these dilemmas within. Each of us will. And that's the beauty of this human experience. As difficult as it can be, it's also part of the beauty. So let's see if there's anything else that I need to say. If you're interested, the movie Inside Out, bringing, I think it's called Inside Out, the Pixar movie. Is that correct? If somebody can help me with that, that would be great. But that's kind of a cool movie of looking at some of what we're talking about in a different way, of how to recover ourselves to resolve some of these dilemmas that we live in. Below in the descriptions, you'll find some of my books. This is the latest. I've arrived. Well, sort of. And there's other books there that you'll find that I've written. As well as my website, which has a lot of blogs and other content that you might find interesting related to this topic of spirituality, but also in terms of coaching and what I do as a coach. And I also train people to be transformational coaches. So if that's of interest to you, head over to my website, theparadigmshifts.com. All right. Thank you again, you guys, for being with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you maybe next week. And bye to Australia as well. All right. Good night, you guys.